Welcome again to the 2023 Watershed Watch Network Roundtable. My name is Erin Stretz. I'm the Assistant Director of Science and Stewardship at the Watershed Institute, which is an organization here in New Jersey. I also coordinate a program called the Watershed Watch Network. That's what we're all here today to kind of chat about. First, before we get started, I just wanted to go through the agenda. We're going to start, of course, in the spirit of the roundtable by doing a round of introductions. So everyone will go through. We'll kind of do it popcorn style. So you can say your name, your organization, location, one sentence very briefly about what you do related to community water monitoring. Since we do have 22 people now, so we'll try to make it a little snappy. After that, we'll hear from 5 folks, starting with Kim Cenno. She's the Bureau Chief with the Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration, and Standards. She'll be talking about data use in the integrated report. Then Debbie Kratzer, an environmental specialist, also with BEARS and my partner on the Watershed Watch Network. She will be talking about our tiered data quality system. Then I will talk a little bit just about some upcoming things and some announcements specific to us here in New Jersey. Then we'll pass it over to Vic Poretti, who's the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Freshwater and Biological Monitoring, to talk about road salt issues. I just want to ask if you guys could stay muted just for a little bit. That would be great. And then we'll hear from Bob Schuster. He is the Bureau Chief for the Bureau of Marine Water Monitoring. He'll be talking about HABs. So to wrap up the day, we're going to do a Q&A session. Thanks so much to all of you for submitting those questions in advance. Wowzers, we got some really good questions, some whoppers. So we will go through those questions at the end, and then we'll follow up. This session is recorded. We'll also follow up with some written responses to some of those questions as well. And then we'll end by just opening the floor to anyone who wishes to share any updates or announcements from your own programs. So again, to start, round of introductions, name, organization, location, and one sentence. I feel like I already did that for myself. I'm Erin Stretz, Watershed Institute. Pennington, New Jersey is where we're located. In Central Jersey, we kind of covered Watershed Management Area 10 and a little bit of 11 and 20. And Watershed Watch Network is what we're doing here today. That's what I do related to community water monitoring. So I'm going to pass it off to Debbie. And again, Debbie, once you're done, you could pick someone else and that person can pick someone, and we'll just go right on down the line. So Debbie, take it away.
I'm Debbie Kratzer. I work at DEP, as Erin said, and one of my projects is to be in charge of the Community Water Monitoring Program. I'll pass it over to Kim next.
Morning, everybody. Kim Cenno, the Bureau Chief, Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration, and Standards. So we host the AmeriCorps New Jersey Watershed Ambassadors Program and community water monitoring here in our Bureau, and we're part of the Division of Water Monitoring and Standards. I'll pass it on to Vic.
Hi, I'm Vic Poretti. I'm the Bureau Chief with the Bureau of Freshwater and Biological Monitoring. We do all the water quality monitoring and biological monitoring at the freshwater streams and lakes throughout the state. And we also are responsible for the HAB response and HAB coordination sampling. Let's see, I'll go to Frank, I guess.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Frank Lipinski. I work with Kim Cenno in the Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration, and Standards. I am the Water Quality Assessment Team lead. So we use the data that Vic's office collects for our streams and lakes, and also the water quality data that a lot of you collect on our freshwater systems, and obviously our marine water monitoring office data to come up with the condition of New Jersey's waters every 2 years. I will pass it on to, let's see, Yaso.
I think Yaso's having some problems logging on. She's been logging on and off a few times.
Thought I saw her picture pop up briefly there, so
Yeah, I
that's
think
why
she fell back
I
out.
selected her. Oh no, okay. I think that's it for. Oh, Bill, is Bill
Is
available?
Jenna? Oh, Bill.
Yeah, hi. Bill Heddendorf, New Jersey DP, Marine Water Monitoring. I oversee all the lab analysis here in the marine water world. So I guess I can pass it over to Bob Schuster.
Yeah, hi, Bob Schuster. I'm Bureau Chief, Bureau of Marine Water Monitoring. We do all the marine water testing, and we get involved a lot. Me and Bill work a lot over the years with a lot of partners and continue to do pollution source track down projects.
Why don't we go to Jenna from OQA? We'll kind of round out the DEP folks.
I'm Jenna Myshak from Office of Quality Assurance. I'm the Assistant Quality Assurance Officer. My office is involved in all the quality assurance office activities within the department, and we review all of the QAPs that come through the program.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to move right down my list, and we'll go to Alex Martin. Alex, name, organization, one sentence, and then you can pass it along.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, I'm Alex Martin. I work for the Nature Conservancy here in New Jersey, in Chester, New Jersey. And I'll be working in the Paulins Kill, doing water quality monitoring and hoping to tie in this 10-year monitoring program with Michelle. And I'll pass it on to Michelle.
Thanks, Alex. Hey, folks. Michelle DeBlasio here, the Watershed Restoration Coordinator for the Nature Conservancy here in New Jersey. And Alex just mentioned we have a 10-year measures and monitoring program in the pollen scale, which I think many of you maybe at this point are familiar. And we'll be continuing those efforts for the final couple years here as we continue to work with many of you on this call to collect data in the pollen scale. I'm going to pass it to Krista because I see you on the screen.
Thanks, Michelle. I'm Krista Reeves. I'm with the Musconetcong Watershed Association. I'm the Water Quality Program Coordinator in Northwest New Jersey. We have a community science group called River Watchers. We monitor road salts, HABs, macroinvertebrates. We do habitat assessments, and we will be starting a new surface water bacteria program this summer. I'll pass it off to Craig Fleming.
Hello, my name is Craig Fleming. I'm with the Musconetcong Watershed Association in Asbury, New Jersey. I am the water quality field specialist, so I help assist Krista in coordinating our volunteer base for all of the different monitoring projects that she had mentioned. And I will pass it to, have we heard from, is there anyone we haven't heard from that I can pass it to?
Clea is ready and raring to go. Let's go to Clea.
Thanks.
Hi, Clea Carchia, Executive Director of the Rahway River Watershed Association. We started habitat monitoring about 5 years ago. We added macros about 2 years ago. I don't know, the years are kind of running together. We're Watershed Management Area 7. And last year we started, sorry, my dog wants to chime in. We started pathogens monitoring.
So speaking of pathogens, why don't we take it to Carrie Cruz? Sorry, is that rude? Speaking of pathogens, let's talk to Carrie.
I feel like that sometimes. Carrie Cruz from the Shark River Cleanup Coalition and the Shark River, now the Shark River Citizen Community Science Monitoring that we started a couple years ago. And we monitor Enterococcus, and right now we're doing direct from stormwater monitoring. We're hoping to expand our program a little this year. And I'll pass it over to Matt DeAngelis.
Hi, I'm Matthew DeAngelis. I work together with Carrie, board member for the Shark River Cleanup Coalition and the sampling lead for the Shark River Community Science Group, which, as Carrie said, is doing fecal indicator bacteria monitoring of stormwater outfalls in the Shark River. And we have plans for the future to do other things, maybe upstream in freshwater or maybe other types of monitoring. And just 2 years into this new, reconstituted program.
Why don't we take it to Emily from RHA?
Hi, Emily Mayer with Raritan Headwaters Association. So I'm the watershed scientist there who runs the stream monitoring program as well as our climate station monitoring program. I'll pass it off to Dave B. Have we heard from him?
Is that me? Dave Bressler, Stroud Water Research Center, Avondale, PA. I support community science among watershed groups in the Delaware River Basin. I don't know who to pass it off to. I don't have.
Yeah, no worries. Donna McHale-Holly from Lake Pacon.
Hi, I'm Donna from the Lake Apacon Foundation. How are you? I am oversee the volunteer monitoring efforts for our salt impact study we do with the Watershed Institute, and we also do have monitoring through a volunteer effort.
This is when it gets a little tough when we're, getting to the end here. I'm just going to go alphabetically then on my list, and that takes us to Roop.
Hi, this is Roop Guha. I have to log in from my cell phone because for some reason the laptop is not working. The connection in the.
You're not the only one, just so you know.
So anyways, this is Roop Guha from NJDEP and the Surface and Groundwater Quality Standards Lead at Division of Water Monitoring Standards and Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration and Standards.
Nice. All right. So let's go down to Gian Smith.
Hi, I'm Gian Smith. I work at the Watershed Institute with Erin. So again, that's Water Management Area 11. I run the Streamwatch water quality monitoring program, and which has been running since '92. And we do chemical, biological, habitat, and pathogen hab monitoring.
All right, thank you, Gian. So Jocelyn, I don't think that we've heard from you, and welcome. I think this is your first kind of meeting with us, so welcome to the club.
Hi, yes, this is my first meeting. I'm Jocelyn Palomino. I am the Pathogens Monitoring Outreach Coordinator for the Lower Raritan Watershed Partnership in New Brunswick. I lead the Pathogens Monitoring Program. We collect samples of enterococci and fecal coliform along the Raritan River from Piscataway to Perth Amboy.
Nice. Thanks,
Yeah,
and welcome again. Michelle Bacchus? Oh, sorry, did I cut you off? Did you have more to add?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Oh, okay, sorry. So yeah, we'll go to Michelle Bacchus and then Noelda, you're on deck.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michelle Bacchus from Rutgers Cooperative Extension with Middlesex County and also Union County. We're the outreach arm of Rutgers University. Work on lots of different natural resource management projects. So I work with Jocelyn on the Lower Raritan River. It's one of my projects with the pathogens monitoring and informing the public of the safety of recreating on the Lower Raritan River. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Noelda and then Prem, you're on deck. Oh no, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you. No. Oh dang. All right, so Noelda, I'm gonna give you a second to do that, and we'll hop to Prem and we'll come back to you. All right, sweet.
Hi, my name is Prem Trivedi. I'm from the Center for Aquatic Sciences in Camden, New Jersey. And my focus is on getting youth from the community here in Camden out to do bacterial water quality monitoring on the Cooper and the Delaware back channel.
Excellent. Okay, so Robert Alec from Sauerland.
Yeah, so Robert Alec from Sauerland Conservancy. We've been working with a stream monitoring program with the Watershed Institute for a couple of years now and looking to expand. We currently have 4 streams that we monitor, and in the upcoming years, adding more. So this is my first meeting with you folks, so I'm excited to get into it.
Yes, welcome. So Robert is replacing the old Sauerland Conservancy program manager, Carolyn. So also welcome to the group. We're happy to have you. Swarna, you
Hi,
are last
everybody.
alphabetically. Hello.
Okay. Hello, everybody. This is Swarna Muthukrishnan from Clean Ocean Action. Few things that we do is one is collaboratively working with the Watershed Watch for the road salt monitoring. Then pathogen source track down in the Navesink and Shrewsbury watersheds, collaborating with Bureau of Marine Water Monitoring and with the Ocean Port Water Watch Committee, and some on our own. And Rally for Barnegat Bay with partners, mates, and Save Barnegat Bay down there, and in Deal Lake with the Deal Lake Commission. And we hope to expand it a little by little, hopefully.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Noelda, just checking in to see if your audio's functioning.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Perfect. Yes.
Nice. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Noelda Souza. I work for Urban Promise in Camden, New Jersey. I oversee the water testing monitoring program here on the Cooper River. We test water in 3 points: in the lake, in the beginning of the tidal portion of the Cooper, and on the Delaware River back channel.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to stop sharing to prepare. Well, first, is there anyone that we missed? Okay, speak now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. You can always unmute and ask a question if you like, or feel free to use the Q&A feature in Teams to ask any questions as we move along. So we're going to jump into our presentations, starting with Kim Cenno. So I'll pass it off to you, Kim.
Okay, so I'm always awful at this, figuring out how to share my screen. So I pressed share. And of course, I can't find the presentation, which I do have open in the background on my screen.
There's also the option to do it like embed it in, do PowerPoint Live. Sometimes that might make it a little easier.
I just tried that. I don't know why it's not. You just browse first.
No worries. Yeah, take a sec. I think we just got Yasso in on the meeting. So if you have a second, Yasso, we were just doing names, organization, and just one sentence on what we do with community monitoring if you'd like to hop in, if you can hear us.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, you're great.
Okay,
Sorry,
okay.
it's been a rough getting in.
Yeah, like, it's still not working completely for me. Like, I cannot see everyone. But if
Oh,
you hear
great.
me, okay. I'm Yaso Sivaganesh. I'm the section chief at the New Jersey DEP, the Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration and Standards. I work with Kim and Debbie and everyone involved with the community water monitoring. I think that's about it about me.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. And thanks for sticking it out and joining us. All right, Kim, looks like you're good to go, so you can take it whenever you're ready.
Okay, so folks can see my screen, and thank you for Root for coming in and showing me that. Thought it would be easier than that. I had it open, but wasn't able to share. So advance.
It looks like you'll just need to scroll down to advance if it's just a PDF. If you can hit the down button, perfect.
Yes, but I think it jumped too far ahead. And just. Okay, thank you. So I'm here to talk about community water monitoring data, which we here in the department use to collect the scientific water quality data from concerned citizens working in partnership with professional scientists and us in the government. Our program is over 20 years old and is been housed within our division and/or our Bureau of Environmental Analysis, Restoration, and Standards that entire time. Our department's volunteer water monitoring program is known as the New Jersey Watch Network and provides training and assistance to people who want to participate in the water monitoring efforts throughout the state, as you know, through our Watershed Institute here, as we fund it with a grant to the Watershed Institute. And our goal of our community water monitoring program is to increase the quality, quantity, and spatial extent of the data produced by our water monitoring programs to aid in our assessment statewide for the water quality conditions and to support our science-based decision making. So on the slide here, we have that the department includes data for the integrated report, and the data must be the Tier 3 with a current approved QUAP and submitted to the WQX database by the deadlines that we have posted in the New Jersey Register. And Debbie in her presentation will walk through that in a little bit more detail. And for our last integrated report, and the integrated report is something that we are required to submit every 2 years to EPA. And it also consists of our 303D list of water impaired water bodies and an accompanying report. And in the 2018-2020 combined cycle, we went completely to a web-based report, which we received a lot of positive comments on. So the 2020 being our last report issued, we had over 10,000 data points from 11 community water monitoring organizations that we used. And the community water monitoring and AmeriCorps data alone combined provided 50% of the available biological data that was used. So very great accomplishment here. Then in this slide, the series of slides that I have coming up show the different parameters and how much data points we have, how many hydrologic unit codes or sub-watersheds the data encompasses, and what the organizations were. So we have on the screen here pH, you see the spatial extent covering 87 HUCs, and just the highlights of the different organizations whose data that we used. Barnegat Bay Partnership, Friends of Bonsall Preserve, Great Swamp, Montclair State University, the Musconetcong River Watershed Association, New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, Raritan Headwaters, Rutgers Water Resource Program, Sparkhill Creek Watershed Alliance, and the Nature Conservancy. So moving on to dissolved oxygen, we also had good spatial coverage for 87 HUCs, or nearly 1,800 data points, and again, many of the same organizations. Then moving on to phosphorus, we had 3 organizations covering 11 HUC 14s, the Great Swamp, Montclair, and Rutgers Water Resource Program. So you see the spatial coverage for that on the slide. And then temperature, wow, 520 HUC 14s. Over 4,000 data points for temperature. And the organizations included the Barnegat Bay Partnership, Friends of the Bonsall Preserve, Great Swamp, Montclair, Musconetcong Watershed, our own DEP AmeriCorps program, the New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, Raritan Headwaters Association, and the Nature Conservancy. Turbidity covered 16 sub-watersheds with 67 data points, and the data that we used for turbidity from volunteers included the Great Swamp Watershed Association and the Nature Conservancy, the New Jersey office. Here is it in a spreadsheet format, the different organizations, the different parameters, and the sources as it's laid out. So I think this is a great takeaway slide. And then this slide is a quantity of the data points. So for the biological, you can see the percent of data that was used, and then all for the different parameters. So I can't stress enough how useful the data is that's collected by our volunteers to help supplement and complement the data that our own bureaus collect along with USGS. And in fact, I'm giving you a quick preview here of our 20 published yet, but I wanted to share this slide with you so that you can see the breakdown moving forward, that our 2022 integrated report, we have over 5 million data points. That's a phenomenal, astronomical amount of data that our folks, Frank Group and our teams in the Bureau, assess that data. And thank you to all of you for collecting it. And as just a quick takeaway from this slide is that the volunteer data has increased to 2% of all our data sources, and in previous reports, it was 1% or less than 1%. So just a quick takeaway and our continued thank you for collecting the data. Okay, did I successfully stop sharing my screen? I see folks.
Not yet. You have to hit the cross on the top right.
Okay. No, that's telling me I want to.
Next to the leave button. Yeah, there it is. You're good now.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much, Kim. We're going to pass it to Debbie Kratzer.
I think it's just loading.
Well, as you can see, thank you. I'm so terrible at this. So you would think after all these years I would have gotten better at it, but I don't. But I thank you for everyone's time. And yeah, Debbie, I guess you're up next.
Thank you, Kim.
Yes, thank you. Can you see my slide now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for being here today. And also, as Kim said, just to reiterate, thank you for the work that you do to monitor our water quality and, for our common goal of protecting and improving our water. So we developed the tiered data quality definitions to provide clarity and guidance on the suitable use of community water monitoring data, which depends on the goals of the data and on the quality assurance measures. Tier 1 is the educational level. Tier 2 is targeting. And Tier 3 is regulatory, and I'll explain what those mean in the next few slides. DEP determines whether a project is Tier 1, 2, or 3, and this assignment is directly based on how the group designs their monitoring and what the group's data goals are, and the quality assurance measures. So Tier 1 is for community education and municipal level engagement. DEP doesn't directly use the Tier 1 data, but we want to acknowledge that it has value. So Tier 1 would involve having a study design and methods. Tier 2 is targeting. So it targets, for example, best management practices, evaluating whether they're effective, and also just making decisions on where VMPs might be installed, and water quality report cards, targeting where additional advanced monitoring is needed, as well as it can inform the DEP's comprehensive regional assessments. So this involves, a greater detail of data documentation and quality assurance, and the CWAP would be approved at the Tier 2 level by DEP and Watershed Watch Network. So the next level is Tier 3. And the uses for Tier 3 include, of course, the Tier 1 and 2 uses, but in addition to that, regulatory uses, which includes the integrated report, which Kim was describing previously, Category 1 designations, and development of total maximum daily loads. So a Tier 3, in order to qualify as Tier 3, it needs to have detailed data documentation and quality assurance, and it has to be approved at the Tier 3 level by not just my office at DEP, but also the Office of Quality Assurance. And it's very important that that this data has the highest quality of quality assurance, because it has the potential of needing to be defended in court. So the 3 tiers apply to any parameters, but when it comes to macroinvertebrates, we divide the Tier 3 into Tier 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. So they're all at the Tier 3 regulatory level, but there's a little bit of a distinction between these 3 levels. So Tier 3.1 is when we do streamside macroinvertebrate identification to the order and family level. Tier 3.2 is to the family level. No one in the state is doing that currently, but I just wanted to include it so you know why there's a 1, 2, and 3. So Tier 3.3 is when the macroinvertebrate sample is collected and preserved and sent to an approved lab. So this would be the same method that Bureau of Freshwater and Biological Monitoring Program uses, and the macroinvertebrates are identified to the lowest practicable taxa. Also, I wanted to note that the habitat method that is used in conjunction with biomonitoring is the same no matter which macroinvertebrate level is used. And just the 3.1 macroinvertebrate tier uses the volunteer indices, and this comes out with a rating, 3 choices of ratings: healthy, undetermined, or stressed. And then the Tier 3.3 uses the high gradient coastal plain and pinelands indices, and the answer, the number that is developed gives you 4 results: either excellent, good, fair, or poor. So just a few more details. QWAPs should be reviewed and resubmitted every 3 years. For Tier 3 status for habitat and biological monitoring, the QWAP needs to include the field accreditations, which happens prior to sampling, macroinvertebrate identification testing if it's a Tier 3.1 or Tier 3.2, 10% replicate sampling, and 5% of the sites are subject to a field audit, which happens while sampling, and the data would be submitted to the Water Quality Exchange, or WQX. So to explain what I mean by field accreditations, this is required for each individual at the Tier 3 habitat and biological data. It must be completed prior to Tier 3 data collection and then every 3 years. So what we do is we observe each individual doing their habitat assessment and their collection of the macroinvertebrate samples, and to assure that they are following the correct protocols. This includes using the EPA Rapid Bioassessment Protocol data sheet, and that is the same for everybody. And if you prefer, you can use the data sheet that Erin has developed for biomonitoring, but if you prefer, you can also use your own data sheet. And in order to schedule the field accreditations, you would contact Erin, and we try to be as flexible as possible and provide different options. So for a smaller group, that could happen while you're sampling, but for a larger group, that needs to be prior to the sampling. And we need to know how many people are going to be there so we have the right number of staff so we can be able to observe each person. We don't want people like standing back and not participating, or we won't know whether they're really capable of doing the protocols correctly. Each person needs to demonstrate that they understand and can do it. And these can be scheduled, a couple, 2 or 3 sessions a day or spread over different days. We try to be as flexible as possible so we can help everyone achieve their monitoring goals. If you're sampling macroinvertebrates at the Tier 3.1 level, we also require each individual to be tested and show that they're able to identify the macroinvertebrates. And this also has to be completed prior to data collection and then renewed every 3 years. And this involves Bureau of Freshwater and Biological Monitoring provides preserved organisms, and Erin sets them up as a 50 organism test. Each person has to do it on their own, but it's open book, and you can use your ID keys, your phone apps, whatever resources you would like, because we want to see each person demonstrate that they know how to go through the keys and identify each sample, each organism in their sample correctly. And they must pass, must have 90% in order to pass. And we provide this free to groups that have POPs. There's also an option where you could pay to with Stroud if you want to do that. We have a couple additional requirements, and that includes 10% replicates. So that's where a second sample is taken at an adjacent reach, either upstream or downstream of your regular site, and is evaluated the same way as the first site. You don't need to do a second habitat assessment. You do submit the replicate results into WQX. This is the DEP has scripts that automatically exclude that data from their normal assessment, so that like one site is not counted twice. But when it's in WQX, then that data can be checked. And then we also do a field audit, and that is when you're actually sampling, and our goal is to audit 5% of sites. And I will reach out to the groups that have QOPs to schedule that. And these are a few websites: the Watershed Watch Network, our BEARS website, currently being updated with community water monitoring resources, a direct link to the EPA Rapid Bioassessment Protocol, and then also BFBM has a lot of co-ops. If you're just looking, like, for example, co-ops, that's a good place to go. And there's my contact information.
Great, thank you so much, Debbie. So we had a few questions come in with the Q&A question submission process that we're inquiring about what is tier 1 versus 2 versus 3, and some questions just surrounding co-ops. We'll get into some more detail about that a little bit later when we get into the Q&A, but thanks, Debbie, for providing that structure for our conversation. So I will share myself now. All right. So I just kind of wanted to start today, my session. There's no real rhyme or reason to my presentation, just a bunch of different random updates, but I wanted to start with some good vibes and talk about a lawsuit. So a few years back, New Jersey DEP, they upgraded miles of streams in New Jersey to Category 1 or C1. So what that means is water quality data has shown that those waters are high enough quality to warrant enhanced protections to kind of meet that anti-degradation requirement. So in response to those upgrades, of course, there are folks who have existing businesses within a floodplain or wish to expand. There were lots of people who were against this, clearly. So Raritan Township Municipal Utilities Authority was just kind of one example of that. They appealed those C1 upgrades, specifically the upgrades to the South Branch Raritan River, because they wanted to expand their sewage treatment plant and found that after these new upgrades to C1, they were not able to. The data that was used, that DEP used to support that Category 1 upgrade was based on the data collected from Raritan Headwaters Association's community monitoring program. And so in their appeal, Raritan Township Municipal Utilities, they had a number of complaints like red tapey, kind of administrative and financial hardship claims and things like that. But a big part of it was questioning the legitimacy of community water monitoring data in the first place to be able to make this kind of regulatory assessment. So a few of us got together and decided to produce an amicus brief, which is basically just a document that you write up to kind of support this decision. So the amici were Raritan Headwaters Association, New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and the Watershed Institute. We had representation from the Eastern Environmental Law Center. We wrote up this amicus brief, and what did they decide? Well, the court came back with this very, very long ruling. This is just one sample. This is one paragraph from that ruling on page 80 and 81. They're basically saying Raritan Township claims that the upgrades were not made by credible data. They criticized DEP upgrading this section of stream because RHA has untrained volunteers. And in the lightest mic drop I've ever seen, they just simply wrote, "We disagree." And so that's kind of a great result to this big lawsuit that was questioning the legitimacy of water monitoring data collected by volunteers. So specifically, of course, the ruling goes into the reasoning behind this, but they did call out the fact that RHA trains their volunteers annually. They have a co-op on file with DEP. And so they made sure to emphasize DEP was confident in using the RHA data to upgrade those water bodies to C1. We would love to be able to kind of share this ruling and our amicus brief. We put a lot of time and effort into this, writing in support of community water monitoring in general, in support of Raritan's program specifically. So we just need to make sure that we are legally allowed to share those documents. And if so, I just want to make sure, and I can post those on the website and you can read through them. But this is a great news really for New Jersey community monitoring. So I just wanted to share that with everyone. Also upcoming, we have some thermometer calibrations that'll be on March 28th. So just as a reminder, if you have an analog thermometer, something that looks like this thermometer here, you are required to get those calibrated once a year. If you have a digital thermometer, now this was kind of, I think this was a new decision as of last year, but digital thermometers have to be calibrated quarterly. So there's a little bit more wiggle room in those thermometers. They need to be checked a little bit more often. That means that if you have a digital instrument, then the calibration on March 28th is good until June 28th. So if you have a digital thermometer and your sampling season extends into July, please let me know and we can coordinate a second thermometer calibration to make sure that you've got calibrated instruments that you're working with in the field. So just if you are getting your thermometers calibrated, this is required for temperature data at the tier 3 level. Please get your thermometers to me by March 25th. I encourage you to use the Watershed Ambassador Network, pass it off to them. They can pass it off to the WMA10 ambassador and they can get it to me. We've also got some field dates scheduled. So we'll be at Frenchtown Park on March 20th and at FREC on March 23rd. If your thermometers are sturdy enough too, you can just pop them in the mail to the Watershed Institute to me specifically. But if they're a little bit more delicate, yeah, let's do the kind of pass off network. And then to get your thermometers back, I'll be at the Watershed Ambassador monthly meeting on April 5th, so I can distribute those thermometers to your ambassadors. Or if you have scheduled field accreditations later in the season, we can bring those to those accreditations. Just kind of kill two birds with one stone. So just a note on the thermometers, if you do have an analog thermometer, you may notice that that column, the liquid column within the thermometer, it can become separated or broken. So in order to calibrate these thermometers, that column does need to be one whole unit. So I'm just going to kind of go over quickly how you can rejoin that. So the first thing is if you've got one of these analog thermometers, you probably have one of these plastic sleeves on it. You want to take that off because what you're going to do is you're going to place that thermometer a few inches above a stovetop. So this picture from Carolina Biological is over a Bunsen burner. You'll probably use like, your stove, whether that's gas or electric, hold it a little bit above it. You're going to let that column rise through the thermometer up to that top bulb, the expansion chamber, and you want to adjust the speed of the heat, according to the distance from the burner, obviously, but you want to do that slowly so that that top bulb does not explode. So that column's going to rise up into the top bulb. Those air bubbles that are within that column will be released, hopefully gently, and then you can place that thermometer in a cup, leave it to cool in ambient air in a vertical position, and then hopefully that column will come back down in one unit. So anytime you do a procedure like this, the thermometer will need calibration after that point. Also upcoming, we have Stream School for Tier 3.1. That's the AmeriCorps method. That is starting on May 3rd. We're partnering with the Sauerland Conservancy on that, but we do have space for about 10 more folks. If you have volunteers or staff that are new to your group, you want to train them up in the Tier 3.1 macro and habitat assessment methods, you are welcome to hop in on this. This is not an event that is going to be publicized and open for registration to the public. So if you do want a spot here or a few spots, just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to work you in. So the location for the field training, that's going to vary depending on who we get as our partner. If we kind of remain with Sauerland Conservancy, then we'll stick with a site kind of in that central Jersey location. More announcements. This is a big one. I'm super excited to announce this. The Watershed Watch Network is going to launch a small grants program later this year. It's intended to support community water monitoring programs in New Jersey. Details are still in development of exactly how this will work, but I can tell you that we'll have $4,000 available in 2023, and that will step up in future years to 7,000 in 2024 and 9,000 in 2025. So stay tuned for that. I'll be sure to shoot that out via email. Also wanted to let you know that we may have a community monitoring group database for continuous data that's also in the works. So DEP has their own continuous monitoring network. They share their data with the Rutgers platform. And we're working with the IT group at DEP to create a similar system specific to non-agency groups. So thanks to, I know Dave is here from Stroud, the Mayfly DIY network has made continuous monitoring kind of ubiquitous across the state. And so it'll be great to get that data in the system and ideally used. Last update really quickly, the Salt Watch program is chugging along. So this is a program we launched in December 2020. We're using protocols based on the Isaac Walton League's Winter Salt Watch program. So just using HAWK test strips, low range chloride test strips, relatively simple for volunteers to submit that data through our Survey 123 link. We've had about 300 volunteers participate so far. If you want to look at that data from December 2020 through August 2022, you can check out this webinar. This link is available, and I'll send out this recording so you've got it and all of these links. So you can check that out. But for this year, this is a look at how many individual submissions we've received so far. So last year we got just over 870 total. This year we've got just over 680 submissions that have come in so far. So I'm hoping to exceed the submissions from last year. This is just a look at the submissions over the last week, and you can kind of see the impact that actual snow has made on the number of submissions. We have over 40 come in yesterday. So the snow has been, not a whole heck of a lot of snow for us here in New Jersey. It's hard to measure the impact of road salt, but there's a lot of anticipatory salt being applied to the roads anyway. So I think we'll still have plenty of data to rely back on here. So moral of the story here is keep them coming. If you have strips, please do use them up. We've got results. This is just a look at over the past 2 weeks. The data that we've collected, you can start to see some of those hot spots emerge, but I just want to give special thanks to Clean Ocean Action, CLONET at Urban Coast Institute at Monmouth University, Food Shed Alliance, Lake Apatcong, Musconetcong, Splash Floating Classroom, and of course the Watershed Institute's Stream Watch volunteers. Y'all have really built this out. You can see very specifically where these different groups are kind of working. And so just in interest of time, I'm going to skip this part, but if you want to take a closer look at this data, please feel free to visit our website, NJWatershedWatch.org/roadsalt, and you can click around and view everything. So this data will be quality assured, sent to our partners at the Isaac Walton League to be shared with the national data. We're also going to use it within the state to identify those hot spots, cross-reference it with where we don't have chloride impairments showing up on the integrated report. We can target some advanced monitoring from DEP staff, and hopefully we can kind of move from this tier 1 data into tier 3 data, which will then kind of move along integrated report and all of the following steps. But I hope that you can also use it in municipal discussions around how your local roads are managed in the wintertime. And if you would like any more information about road salt or our monitoring projects specifically, I encourage you to check out these 2 webinars as well, from Muskie, from Barnegat Bay Partnership, and Brick Township Municipal Utilities Authority. So that will lead us pretty nicely into our next section, which is to hear from Vic Poretti about road salt. So I will pass it off to Vic.
Thanks, Erin. I don't have a presentation. Our road salt project has been kind of spotty over the years for various reasons, and one very big reason. So basically, we started about 2016-17 with a pilot project local to us in Ewing at the Shabbaconk Creek, and since then in 2019 we expanded that statewide. So we deployed connectivity loggers at 10 sites that take continuous monitoring readings every 30 minutes for connectivity. We also collect discrete samples at the same site 6 times a year, basically every other month. And the discrete samples are analyzed for chloride and total dissolved solids. And at the time we sample, we also take meter readings, the usual suite of readings, temperature, dissolved oxygen, pH. Sites are located throughout the state. They're mostly concentrated in the Northeast. So we have sites in the Passaic region, Rahway, but we also have sites in the Cooper River and Manasquan. The site selection is based on recommendations from Kim's group and Bears. But we also look at other characteristics of sites that include sites that are impaired for either chloride or total dissolved solids, or sites within HUCs that are low on data. So some of the challenges we've had, basically COVID. So 2019, we weren't permitted to sample or work. The connectivity loggers that we had out before the pandemic, the batteries died because we couldn't retrieve them. Unfortunately, the data was lost. So we had to replace those loggers. And again, just the whole, what everybody experienced due to supply chain issues with the vendor, it took a long time to replace those loggers. So now this February, I think we're finally back on track. We deployed all the loggers at our sites, and fingers crossed the program will continue as we intended it to. The data that we do have, not surprisingly, we found that all the sites had a large spike in connectivity during periods right after a snow melt or rain during a winter storm. Deb Kratzer and some other Bear staff, I've looked at the relationship between chloride and connectivity and TDS and connectivity, and found that there's a very strong correlation between them. So that's good information. The continuous connectivity loggers, could provide good information on, road salt activity. Just some other points of interest for the group. We do have an internal DEP work group. It's our staff at Freshwater Monitoring and Bear staff to discuss potential TMDLs and the data that would be necessary for that. We also are part of a regional work group that's coordinated by the RBC. Deb Kratzer is also part of that work group. And that also has representatives from other states and volunteer organizations. And that just started about a month ago. So, we're hoping to have some collaboration and get some good information from this work group. As of now, there's no regulations that apply to road salt application. The only regs that are for stormwater regs that regulate the storage of the road salt. There are suggested BMTs related to application, but that's about it. They're suggestions. So far, New Jersey DOT hasn't been very responsive when we reached out to them to collaborate to address some of these issues with road salt application. So, ideally, what we're pursuing is to try to identify a willing municipality to pilot a program to work on the efficient use of road salt application, so that we could highlight what this potential pilot program to highlight the best practices for applying road salt that would have the least impact on the stream environment. That's about it. So I said no slides, kind of straightforward. So thank you.
Thank you, Vic. And I just wanted to take a minute here. And if anyone has any questions as we're chatting here, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. We are about to head into the Q&A session after we hear from Bob Schuster.
Hi, Erin. Thanks for having me on today. I too don't have slides. Even if I did, I don't know if they'd work very well with the network issues we're having. That was, I think, a problem for a lot of us logging on today. Essentially, we continue to do bacterial source trackdown throughout the state where we see water quality issues. We always love to continue, partnerships where we can with community monitoring. Currently, we're in talks working with Clean Ocean Action to bring back the community monitoring that was done in the Navasink that got put on hold during COVID. We're looking to bring that back because it was very beneficial in helping us find hotspot areas to put more intensive focus. We would also, with recent shellfish water suspensions, are continuing to see declining water quality within Shark River. We are continuing to do work in Shark River to look at that, so we'd love to keep that, an operation going, as I heard Shark River mentioned earlier. And the work that was being done, we'd love to see that continue. There's other areas that we're working. We will always look for partnerships if possible. We work closely with municipalities, but if there's community organizations or other, Barnegat Bay Partnership or other groups that want to be involved, we have a lot of areas we're working on in Barnegat Bay where we saw shellfish water suspensions. I will mention that anybody that will be attending the National Water Monitoring Conference, Bill Hedendorf, that's on today, will be presenting on source trackdown at that meeting. Things that we want to get across, and when people think of source trackdown, we've done a lot of work with EPA. I heard, the Delaware River and the back channel and Cooper River area. We've been involved in meetings on that to help work throughout these groups to develop those plans. We'll continue to do that. Source trackdown, though, I just want people to keep in mind, as much as source, a lot of people focus on whether, it's an animal, a human, domestic animal. One thing that we always want to get across the source is also the location of it. So me and Bill are working internally to start developing, a training thing for internal to help our staff, and new staff come on board to learn the principles. So it's something that we probably want to share going forward once we develop that, because it's really important to think of not just what that source is from, but where that source is originating from, because that's really what you need to get at especially when you're looking at a larger watershed area. It's usually 2 or 3 points within a big area contribute some of the biggest amounts of pollutant load. And if we can figure out what to do in those hotspot areas and then apply it elsewhere, I think it would make remediation efforts much more efficient. So it's a twofold approach: what the source is from and where the source is located, where those high levels are coming from. So I think that's an important component. As mentioned, when we put more of that together for our staff, it's something we probably share through not only, through meetings like this, but potentially, also at the New Jersey Water Monitoring Council. I think it's important to advance this as we learn more and more. That's pretty much what I have and what we're up to, and how we always encourage, assistance and community help to find hotspot areas like up in the Navasink and other locations.
Thank you so much, Bob. Yeah, you do have a rich history. You've helped the Watershed Institute do some source tracking work, Shark River. I know we've been in conversations for a while. Of course, Clean Ocean Action and the whole Navasink thing. I'm glad to hear that this is kind of coming back into play after the pandemic. So that's really great news. Plus, just on that note, I will be sending you a separate email because I have been working with Noilda and Prem on the Delaware River around the Camden and Philly area to do some pathogen monitoring. So I think, you had specifically talked about the back channel of the Cooper. I think there's definitely areas for us to collaborate.
Oh, absolutely. And I know I know Camden County Utilities, DRBC, there's been a lot of, interest in that area. So it's something that we can certainly work on.
Awesome. Sounds great. All right. Now we're going to get into the good stuff. I'm going to reshare my screen here. And we're going to get into the Q&A session. So thanks again to those of you who submitted questions for this. I was super pleasantly surprised just at the quality of the questions. It really seemed like, people that this was something that you guys wanted. So I do appreciate that. Anyway, so I've broken out the questions into different categories. So we'll start with QAPs and quality assurance and kind of work through these different categories. I'm going to present the questions here kind of individually or in groups if they're kind of similar questions. We're going to open it up for verbal responses from the DEP staff panel that we have today. I want to let you know that some of these questions we may not be able to answer live. Some of these are sort of complicated questions or very specific questions. So I will be following this up with written materials to kind of respond to these questions as well. So you'll have this to fall back on as well as that to look forward to. All right. Without further ado, I want to say also, if you do have additional questions that kind of come up as we're chatting, again, please pop them in the Q&A or in the chat. Okay. So the first round of questions were about just kind of the logistics of QAPs. Someone asked, once a QAP is written, can a DEP staff person review it before it's submitted? Another question we received was how often a QAP should get updated, who should review and approve it. So I will open up to the group to answer.
Yeah. Sorry, Debbie, you can go.
Yeah, I'll address these. So it's yeah. There we go. We're back to the slide.
Sorry.
Usually a group will submit their QAP to me and Erin first, and if there's any glaring errors, we'll send it back to you. But if it's just minor comments, we'll share it around with the other DEP staff to review. They should be updated every 3 years. So sometimes your project might be consistent and not really be changing after 3 years, and then it would just require like a memo or a very short addendum that just says we are continuing the same thing, and then that really expedites getting it approved because we don't have a lot to read. We can just say, well, it was good before, we're just confirming you're the same staff, you're doing everything the same, and we probably won't take very long at all. But by having that touch point every 3 years, then we know that we're all on the same page.
Excellent. All right, so the next group of questions were about errors in QAP preparation. So the questions were, what is the percent of first-time QAP submissions that are approved, and what is the most common QAP error for community water monitoring groups submitting QAPs?
So it's not really a percent of first-time QAP submissions. It's like an iterative process, so we would work with you. So it's I guess if you're saying how often is a QAP approved without any comments at all, that would probably be pretty rare. But sometimes the biggest error is just being very clear in what your goals are for the project, and that your project is designed to answer that goal. So sometimes it's a great idea to ask us for a meeting to discuss what your goals are, and we'll get the right people together and with the expertise to give you the advice maybe before you even write your QUAP.
Excellent. Yeah. So the approval system, it's not like we're looking to reject anyone. We're looking to work with you to make your QUAP good enough to be approved and so that you can actually do the work. So yeah, thanks, Debbie. Definitely an iterative process, back and forth and back and forth. All right. So how long does it take for DEP to respond to and approve a QUAP?
So this can vary, and we're doing our best to try to keep it under 60 days. But remember that includes that when we send our comments back to you, that you have to be timely in making those changes. So we're and also that all this needs to be done before you start sampling. And I think Jenna would back me up on that.
Yes, I would back you up on that. You have to make sure the QUAP is fully approved before you start any sampling.
Okay, and the last question in this section, how much training and skills demonstration are recommended for water samplers?
So this again depends on what your tier level is that I described. So, and we will, when it's a biological and habitat project, then we will provide the training and the accreditation to demonstrate your skills. If it is other parameters like collecting water samples to be analyzed in a lab, or doing the lab work, or doing the what we call analyze immediately, those are the field parameters. Those are according to Office of Quality Assurance guidelines or requirements.
Speaking of the Office of Quality Assurance, our next group of questions are all to do with OQA lab certification and different questions related to that. So Jenna, I will open this up to you, and of course, anyone else from the DEP panel who would like to answer. So the first group of questions, how long does it take for DEP OQA, Office of Quality Assurance, to go through lab certifications and proficiency testing? And what are the steps for a community group to go through proficiency testing for in situ parameters? So first, maybe it would be helpful to explain what lab certification is and what proficiency testing is.
Okay, so the NJC 718 is the regulations governing the certification of environmental laboratories. So the laboratory certification program administered by the Office of Quality Assurance oversees about 700 laboratories that do environmental testing. The time frame for certification will really vary depending on what parameters an entity is looking to get certified for. You mentioned just the in situ parameters, so that would just be a handful of parameters. So that would be a little bit quicker than if a lab was trying to come into the program as a new full service commercial environmental lab. But essentially, you would put together an application package which contains a list of personnel with their approval, demonstrating that they meet the lab cert requirements to be qualified as a quality assurance officer and laboratory supervisor. You would create a standard operating procedure for each of the methods. So if you were trying to get certified for example, dissolved oxygen and pH, you would write a procedure explaining the meter that you're using, how you calibrate the meter, how often you check the meter, all the details related to the meter calibration frequency. Then you would submit that application. So then you would also have to participate in the proficiency testing. So Erin, you asked me to explain proficiency testing. So that's essential. Proficiency testing, a good way to think of, is a blind sample that you obtain externally. So essentially you'd purchase from a commercial vendor a sample with an unknown pH, and then you would test it and you would get a number and report it to the external vendor. And your number needs to be within a certain range. So for example, the pH of that sample might be 6.2, and you would have to report a number within, say, 6.0 to 6.4 in order to receive a result of acceptable. Generally, I would say at this point, we're looking at 6 to 8 months from when you submit the application for laboratory certification to when you would actually get certification. That varies depending on the time of the year and how many applications we're getting, but that would probably be a good baseline. I think, Erin, was there another component? Or do you think I covered?
No, I think that's good. It's good to know the timeline for sure. Especially as we were talking about the continuous monitoring database, to share continuous data with the state, for groups to be able to use that data, continuous data for tier 3 purposes. They need to become certified for those analyze immediately parameters or in situ parameters, however you want to phrase it. So this would be the process that you would need to go through for that. So thank you, Jenna.
Yes.
We do have
And,
oh, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say just one more thing. So the application is available on the Office of Quality Assurance website. So it's considered a part 1, part 2, and part 3. So 1 is about the administrative information for the laboratory that would be developed. Part 2 is personnel information, and then part 3 would be which parameters you're actually seeking certification for. But the details about applying for certification are on our website.
Perfect. So some more logistics about that. What is the fee for lab certification for analyze immediately parameters? And then is there any opportunity for fee reduction for community water monitoring groups? And that question clearly is opened up to anyone who's willing to answer.
I could answer that one as well. So the
Oh,
fees
perfect.
are all defined in the lab certification rules. So there's an initial application fee, which is $600 plus the cost of the category codes. So it would depend. I'm guessing you would only be people would only be looking for non-potable water, right? The community program monitoring groups wouldn't be interested in drinking water. So it would be the $600 plus, I believe that category code fee is $235. So it would be $835 initially, and then each year you'd have to renew your certification. So it would be the same. It would be, or actually, I'm sorry. I think it's 900 plus 235 originally, and then after that, it would be $600 renewal fee plus 235. So it's somewhere around I would just say roughly 1,000 per year for that certification.
Okay.
And I'm not aware of any reduction at this point. I don't know if that would be something through a grant. I don't know, Debbie, would you know of any reduction in fees for that? It wouldn't come through our office.
So far, the option that I guess was used at some point in the past was using like the 319 money, but now it's prohibited to use the money for that purpose. So we don't currently have the ability to do that, to reduce fees.
Okay. All right. So we will move on. Oh, yes. Where is a reliable list of commercial labs with pricing that are certified by OQA?
So you can go access that through the department's data miner. However, that does not specify pricing. You'd have to contact the individual labs. So if you went onto data miner through the DEP website, you can access, there's a section for certified labs. But again, it's sorted by county. So you'd be able to find certified labs in a particular county, but you'd have to call the phone number that's listed to ask about pricing.
So I'll include in response to this question in the written response, I'll make sure that we include that link so you can just click and see all the lists of the labs. Most of those labs, like Jenna mentioned, do not share their pricing on their website. So you do kind of have to do a little digging, unfortunately, for that.
Yes, and I think from hearing from a lot of people, the laboratories vary dramatically in price. So I would recommend calling a few of them.
Yeah, good call. And some of them have better customer service than others as well. So, I won't talk about that here, but you can email me and ask for suggestions. All right. So how often these are very specific questions. So how often is calibration required for handheld meters for connectivity? And then does temperature require quarterly calibration, just like other digital thermometers?
So conductivity calibration is required initially, and then you would need to verify the meter after the calibration. So you need to do at least a conductivity check each day. So if the meter is still meeting the acceptance criteria, which conductivity is 1%, then you don't have to recalibrate. However, if it fails to meet that 1%, then you would need to recalibrate and then reread the standard. So it doesn't have to be calibrated daily, it has to be at least checked daily. Then for temperature, the thermocouples are required to undergo calibration quarterly, but thermometers, like a glass thermometer, is annually.
Right, okay. And then, so just another question that popped up as you were talking, you mentioned that groups should be creating their own SOPs for all of these parameters. Do you have any example SOPs for like the most common analyze immediately parameters that you'd be willing to share with the group?
We have, I believe we have on our website. I don't think we have currently, we might have one for pH, but I don't think we have them for any of the other parameters. But at this point, no, I don't have any that I would be willing. I mean, because since my office administers the lab certification program, so we wouldn't be able to distribute, the SOPs that the labs are providing to us.
Gotcha, okay. Okay, so the next round of questions is related to water quality assessment, specifically, the integrated report and the methods there. So the first question here is, when was the last triennial review of water quality standards? So for the answer, I wonder if you can first explain what a triennial review is.
I guess I can take that, unless Kim, you want to take that.
No, Rip, you got it.
So triennial review is review of all the surface water quality standards, which was mandated by the Clean Water Act. So as it means, like it's every 3 years review, all states are supposed to go over all the standards, including the designated uses, classifications, criteria, etc., policies in the surface water quality standards. And if EPA has already recommended certain updates to the criteria, those may be revised or updated in the standards. And if they're not revised or updated, then states are to be given the justifications.
Okay, well, when was the last review?
So last year, on July 5th, a proposal was published, which updated the surface water quality standards to incorporate the freshwater ammonia criteria that EPA recommended earlier in 2015, and also the primary contact recreational criteria that was updated in 2015 or 16, I forget. But anyway, so in addition to that, we also incorporated the surface water quality standards variance as a policy. And there were some other administrative changes. So the way this process goes is that once it can be done independently, but traditionally most of the states combine the rulemaking with a triennial letter to EPA. So once the rule is adopted, it's then certified by the Attorney General and then sent to EPA for approval of the adoption or adopted updates. And when that adoption letter is sent, in the same letter, basically, the states include the triennial review. So if, for example, EPA updated the toxics criteria for 94 toxics in 2017, that the department already stakeholdered last year, and it's anticipating is the rule proposal soon. So that's an example that we will say that we are working on it. and it will be proposed. It has been stakeholdered, and if there are certain cases where, say, the states need more time to evaluate. So, for example, EPA came out with the aluminum criteria, freshwater aluminum criteria. So, in that case, the states can say that the justification of not adopting it is to that states are evaluating the criteria. So it depends upon the criteria and everything else, whether the states are ready to adopt or not. In certain cases, like ammonia, freshwater ammonia criteria, when we proposed or when the department proposed last year um, for the Pineland waters, the department chose to keep the existing criteria for the pinelands because they were specifically developed for the low pH waters of the state. So in that case, the justification of not adopting EPA's freshwater criteria for the ammonia freshwater criteria was that it is not applicable to those low pH waters.
Sure. All right. Thank you so much for your reply there. There's a few more questions on water quality standards and criteria. So the next question is, would you consider lowering your chloride standard to be more supportive of aquatic life? So there's some literature that suggests that should be around 50 milligrams per liter chloride rather than the 230, I think, which is the current standard, chronic standard.
Yes. So for the, again, I think I can take that too. The current chloride acute and chronic aquatic life criteria are 860 and 230 milligrams per liter respectively. For the fresh waters, there's the FW2 waters. And these criteria were based on US EPA's recommendations from 1988. The department at this point is not anticipating any updates to the chloride criteria. But of course, if you have any input or scientific evidence supporting the 50 milligrams per liter threshold that is protective of the aquatic life criteria, the department will evaluate that.
Okay. Excellent. Next question. How do you implement the narrative criteria? So the example was FW1 waters must be maintained in their natural state. So, like how is that defined?
I will probably start this too, unless Kim or Frank, you want to pitch in. So the narrative criteria, there are several narrative criteria in the surface water quality standards. They are usually implemented through the site-specific criteria development. So basically, there is a narrative criteria for nutrients. We could develop site-specific criteria to make sure that the narrative criteria are met. We could also develop TMDLs to meet the narrative criteria, or they could be implemented by the NJDEP or the stormwater MS4 permits. As for the FW1 waters, generally the state parks are designated as FW1 waters, so there are no discharges over there. But the way we implement the narrative criteria for those is that no new permitted discharges are allowed to these waters, and also the department cannot approve any activity which might alter the existing water quality in these waters. And these waters are meant to be undisturbed. I mean, that's what the essence was for these FW1 waters. So, we have currently some efforts underway to evaluate if there are additional protections that can be afforded to these waters, such as a riparian zone or a riparian buffer. But nothing final has been finalized. But essentially, these waters, in these waters, no new discharges, permitted discharges are allowed, and no activities are allowed which might alter the existing water quality.
So when you're thinking about the narrative criteria in terms of like water quality standards and assessment, would you then judge an FW1 water as impaired if it's not maintained in its natural state? Is that what that means?
Well, Frank, you may pitch in over here, but essentially for the FW1 waters, they are not meant to reduce, their water quality is not meant to become impaired because they are already in pristine state. Now, do we assess those waters? Yes, we do assess those waters, but we apply the FW2 and T criteria. And Frank, correct me if I'm wrong here.
No, that's right. That's right.
So, I mean, but that's basically just to ensure whether the water quality is degrading or they're being maintained or not. But as I said before, they are in the state parks, they are in the natural state, and unless something significant natural has occurred, they should not happen. Now, again, like during the assessment process, if we see, and I don't think we have seen this, that that water quality is degrading, then we definitely evaluate that.
Okay. So the next questions are related to, I think, groundwater and drinking water. Surface water is in the integrated report. How is groundwater assessed relative to surface water in the integrated report?
Sure. I can weigh in on this one to start, Roop, and hop in if you want. We don't assess groundwater relative to surface water. Groundwater has its own standards. We do have part of our assessment report that speaks to groundwater. I'll put a link in the chat. It is in the statewide tab in our integrated report. So we have a specific section written that contains the information on the condition of groundwater in New Jersey based on well sampling that another office does inside the department. So let me put that link in the chat here for everyone's reference. Again, that information is on the statewide tab.
And I'll include that in the emailed materials as well. Thank you. Is PFAS included in the water supply use assessment? I think because this is a relatively emerging contaminant.
Yes, I'll also attempt to answer that one. PFAS is not included in the water supply use currently, the assessment. We do speak to PFAS in the tab in that water quality report link that our office provided in 2020. We'll be updating it for 2022. And one of the pollutants of concern, statewide concern that we identified in that 2020 report was PFAS. It talks about what the department is doing to address that pollutant. It talks about the monitoring that's happening to date. And then on that tab, there's a link to additional information that's been gathered throughout the department on that pollutant. But we currently do not assess water supply use for PFAS.
The last question on this topic, how is a water body designated as an outstanding natural resource water? Maybe it would be best to define what an outstanding natural resource water is first.
Roop, you want to?
Yeah, I'll go with it.
Thank you.
So the outstanding natural resource waters include surface waters that are classified as FW1 and the Pinelands waters, which is a PL. And these waters are set aside for posterity because of their unique significance. And as I mentioned before, the department does not or cannot approve any activity which might alter existing water quality in these waters. So historically, the FW1 waters were all the waters that are flowing through the state parks or national parks. And we are currently evaluating whether we can or we can or we should expand the selection process.
Okay. Oh, so that's currently being evaluated. Good to know. Good to know. All right. If there are any questions that pop up as we're moving through these questions again, please feel free to pop them in the chat. But we will move on now to what I'm calling more specific questions, kind of a catch-all category. So the first question that we've gotten this question from a lot of our partner municipalities who are maybe worried about new implementation of the new MS4 permit requirements. But are there any water quality monitoring requirements as part of this permit?
So I'll take this one. And my response is based on reviewing the current MS4 general permit that was issued in January. So my read of it, and again, we'll consult with the MS4 program to confirm the response. But my read of the permit was in Appendix A, they talk about requiring community involvement activities, and they have a point system where you have to earn 12 points. And it says and then they have different categories. They have a category 5 and a category 3, and what you have to do under those categories to earn points. So for example, one of the things they have is establish a stream monitoring program for a water body within the municipality. And then they suggest contacting the AmeriCorps New Jersey Watershed Ambassadors Program. So if a municipality was interested in doing that to gain, that's worth 3 points. They certainly could reach out to our Watershed Ambassadors Program, and we in turn, of course, would coordinate with the Community Water Monitoring Program and to develop something that would suffice. And perhaps these existing volunteer monitoring programs that are running through your municipalities may already suffice to be worth the 3 points. So I certainly think that this is the nexus here related to monitoring and supporting the MS4 permit. Another example they have is a requirement for school and youth education and activities. And so for 4 points, they have coordinate a stream monitoring event through AmeriCorps. So again, if this is of interest to municipalities to reach out to our AmeriCorps program, and or in turn, our folks can't do it all in AmeriCorps, and they only serve 10 months out of 12 months of the year. So we, of course, would want to coordinate that with existing volunteer monitoring groups. So that was my read on the MS4 permit, where I think that there's the nexus to relate to a monitoring requirement. Again, it is in one of the options that they identify under 2 different headings in the MS4 permit is a volunteer monitoring component, which gives them credit towards their 12 points that they need annually as part of their MS4 municipal permit.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think maybe there was some confusion because there's a monitoring component for stormwater management infrastructure, but not for surface waters specifically. So, but that's great to know about the point system, specifically the, how many points you can get from the Watershed Ambassador educational program. That's very interesting. I think a lot of groups will take advantage of that. The next question, also on the topic of the MS4 permit. Will bacterial TMDLs be adjusted to account for the new MS4 permit or vice versa?
This is a great question. We have not considered that yet, so I won't agree or disagree to that yet. We are revisiting some of our older TMDLs that were done in the early 2000s. I spoke last year at the HAB Summit where I talked about TMDLs that we had done for lakes for phosphorus, and that we were revisiting those in light of HAB's problems on some of those key lakes, updating the TMDLs and having stronger TMDL implementation plans, which would then correlate to potential additional measures and MS4 permits. So we are on a trend of revisiting what we have done as necessary and as programmatic requirements change and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I am not putting it on the table at this time.
Okay. The next question, I think the next two are about pathogens specifically. What is the most reliable and economical parameter to search for signs of sewer contamination?
Bill, do you want to jump in from the lab on there?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the economical part of it, but I know we do two different parameters. We do the enterococcus for FIBs when it comes, if there's any like bathing beaches in the area, because that is the standard for them. And then if it's affecting shellfish growing waters, the most reliable parameter there would be your fecal coliform. I only know from purchasing the medias that the fecal coliform is less expensive than the enterococcus by a pretty significant amount. But yeah, those would be the two best parameters for sign of sewerage and contamination.
Yeah, and I'll add on that to go to some of the advanced techniques there, you know, to break that down. At this point, there is nothing. It's not that it's not economical. It's the equipment and the upfront cost that you have to get to that point. So I don't know of anything specifically on the advanced markers. I would say the biggest thing that people could do, as Bill mentioned, is being that there's a cost associated with some of those additional markers looking specifically for sewage or, you know, different types of animals, would be to target that monitoring and really focus on the fecal indicator bacteria on where you have the highest results. To do background studies and look at water bodies and try to say what's coming from what has not proven to be very effective. So you really need to target those efforts and use those advanced techniques, you know, specifically for markers on samples that weren't that to be done on. That's typically what we do, even with having some of the infrastructure. It's a lot of money to spend. You know, if a sample, I mean, I hate to say it, if a sample is only 200, but I got another sample that's 5,000, it's much more cost effective to run it on the sample that's 5,000 and much more conclusive on what you see from that.
That makes sense. I would say the most economical way for a group, though, to do this kind of work is to partner with you guys and to do it for free.
I mean, there's always those partner opportunities with some of the markers. I think, you know, EPA is also somebody we've been working with that has done more of this recently too, and so they've been helpful in that northern part of the state at Region 2. We've partnered with them. We're actually going to do some split sampling just to verify that all of those methods, we're seeing the same things and everything's working the way that it should. So I think there are opportunities for that, especially when you identify those hotspot areas and, you know, go into those hotspot areas to find out what it is.
Right. And there's also universities who are doing this kind of work. I think it's, Raritan Valley Community College and at Montclair State University. They also have labs and they kind of will perform this work at cost for groups as well. So I'm happy to share the links to those folks as well. All right.
And Erin, before you move
please,
on,
yeah.
I have just a quick comment. When you talk about the parameter for signs of sewage contamination, just keep in mind that the fecal indicator is a key term here, and whether it's New Jersey or EPA or I mean the federal level, for sewage indicator in the freshwaters, it is E. coli, and for the marine waters or saline waters is Enterococcus. So they are again the fecal indicators. So that's why, like, they are probably the best parameter that you can measure
Thank you so
or
much
target.
for saying that. Yes, absolutely. E. coli for fresh, Entero for brackish and marine. Perfect. Okay, this last question is from our friends at Citizens United for the Maurice River. This is a very specific question. I'm not sure if they're on today, but I figure we can just go over it anyway. They participate in a program that is hosted by the National Park Service and the USGS called the Dragonfly Mercury Sampling Project. They have, in this national study, shown that mercury contamination in the Maurice is one of the highest in the entire country. So their question was, does DEP participate in the Dragonfly Mercury Sampling Project, or, how does DEP monitor mercury?
I think I can handle that. So as far as mercury and fish tissue and contamination, that program is handled by our Division of Science and Research. I checked with them, and right now they're not actively researching the area, but this area is already in a moderate to strict advisory as far as fish consumption. They're not participating in this particular project either, but they are willing to assist if needed. They could, investigate any historic data in this area to see if, and compare it to nearby regions to see if there is indeed a spike in this area as compared to neighboring watersheds. So if there is some assistance needed as far as that type of investigation, if they're willing to help out.
That would be great. Yeah, I will let CA Maurice know. Excellent. All right. So this is the last section. There were 2 questions that fell into this category, which I'm calling potential future webinars of interest. I'll send out with the materials. I'll follow up with probably a poll to ask if you are interested in webinars like this. But basically what I'm saying is the answers to these particular questions are nuanced and complicated and will take longer than the 8 minutes that we have remaining. So one of the questions we got, this is a great question. What are the best practices for releasing your results to the public, to municipalities? Do you release them kind of as you're working, or annually, or quarterly? Do you give them the raw, unfiltered data, or do you interpret it and produce a scorecard or report card thing? The short answer to this is it depends. So it really depends on what your goals are, what your intention is, what you wrote in your co-op as to how you want to use the data. So if you're at the tier 3 level and your goal is to submit your data to DEP, obviously there's specific requirements for that. Submitting the raw data to the Water Quality Exchange, or WQX. If you're sharing that data with the public or municipalities, that raw data is not going to mean anything to them. Like, what is a 4 milligrams per liter dissolved oxygen? If you're sharing it with just the public, I would encourage you to do some sort of interpretation of that data, looking at a scorecard, kind of grading your results, and then sharing either a grade, A, B, C, D, E, or excellent, good, fair, poor, or pass, fail, however it makes sense for you. But this is clearly an area that we could explore. So if you are interested in a webinar just on data sharing and publication and visualization, please mention so in the chat or shoot me an email, and we can look into that. The next question was about how to enter data into and retrieve data from the water quality portal. For those of you who have entered data into the water quality portal, you know that this answer is clearly much longer than the time we have allotted. So I have been working one-on-one with groups to get their data into WQX, into the Water Quality Exchange. Your data goes into WQX, and then it is from there that it is pushed forward to the water quality portal. So you put data into WQX, you get it back out of the water quality portal. Now, if you just type into Google, water quality portal, this will be the first result that pops up, and you can set your search criteria to look for data specifically from your organization if you have data in WQX already, or you can set like a bounding box with lat-long coordinates, or just 1 point with like a 1 mile radius around it, or however big an area you want to look at. And you can filter the results based on biological data, on habitat data, on chemical data, what have you. This is another area that we could definitely explore. But if you have specific questions about entering your data into WQX, please reach out to me. I would be happy to walk through it with you. This past summer, we had some deadlines for data submission for the 2024 integrated report. So through that process, I kind of came up with some templates and some more detailed instructions to be able to help people through that. Some groups are submitting their WQX data on their own if they're feeling comfortable. For other groups, I'm kind of providing that service for them. So we're just kind of doing it however it works for you. So again, I'll follow up about these potential future webinars of interest. Other things that are coming up, just kind of how you can stay up to date on these topics. DEP is holding a HAB summit for harmful algal blooms titled New Challenges, Lasting Solutions. That will be on March 30th over Teams. Registration will be required, but that information is forthcoming, so we'll make sure that you get that. I also want to mention, this has been mentioned earlier, the New Jersey Water Monitoring Council meetings occur quarterly. Bob is a chair of the New Jersey Water Monitoring Council. So I'm wondering, Bob, if you've got the date for the next meeting. I believe it's in May.
Yeah, let me look that up.
Yeah,
I believe it is in May, and I'll share that with you.
Sounds
I'll
great.
make sure we get that
can
out.
pull that out after. Yep, that's totally fine. Also, I don't know if you've got plans next month, but hey, there's a few national conferences coming up. April 24th to 28th in Virginia Beach, we're going to the National Water Quality Monitoring Conference. This is a conference that's hosted by NALMS, which is the North American Lake Management Society, as well as the National Water Quality Monitoring Council. This is my favorite conference that I go to, and I hope that some of you are attending as well. It's really a fun time, and it's in Virginia Beach, so that's nice. There's also another conference called the Seaside Conference coming up in Arizona in May. Now, I just wanted to bring this up. I imagine that not many of us will be traveling to Arizona, but I wanted to bring up the language here. Seaside with the asterisk is the language that lots of other groups are using, so that we're moving a little bit away from the use of the word citizen in science. We in New Jersey, we call it community science. And so with this conference, they're just like, see, whatever you want to call it, Sci conference. And on that note, EPA, I should mention, has changed their terminology to participatory science. So all of these things in flux. But there's also these other resources. You can check out our website at njwatershedwatch.org for the resources that Debbie had mentioned related to Tier 3 monitoring, specifically habitat and macroinvertebrate monitoring. You can check out the National Water Quality Monitoring Council's volunteer monitoring work group at volunteermonitoring.org. And then also wanted to mention EPA, they really made some upgrades to their How's My Waterway website. So you can check that out, do local searches on water quality, look for statewide assessments. You could look at things parameter specific. You can look for TMDLs. There's tons of information there. And of course, there's my email address if you would like to shoot me an email. So I'm going to unshare. Boy, we had a lot on the agenda today. But if anyone would like to make any announcements, share anything from your specific programs, please unmute and make yourself heard.
I'll let you know, Erin, the New Jersey Water Monitoring Council meeting is scheduled. We have it tentatively scheduled for May 24th.
Are those going to remain virtual, do you think?
At this point, they seem to be that direction. I think we're looking to start to change that in the future, but potentially also we've been talking about hybrid.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I have to say the Watershed Institute has gotten into the hybrid meeting world, and the opportunity for technical mistakes just skyrockets, but it's also a great way to engage more people that aren't going to drive all the way to you. So
yep.
Yeah, pluses and minuses, of course. I was just scrolling back up through the chat and I saw a question from Michelle de Blasio. Great question. I'm assuming you were referring to the lab certification fees. Is this an eligible expense for the new small grant program? I don't think that we would be able to do that, because basically what that would be doing is taking DEP funds to pay DEP for lab certification. So that's kind of I don't know. Debbie, Kim, if you want to hop in here and talk to that.
I'm sorry, what was that?
So the question is, could you use the small grants funding to get your lab certification fees paid for at OQA?
And is the source of your funding your grant from us or additional funds that you have?
Exactly. Yeah, no, so this would be through Watershed Watch Network's small grants program. Can a group apply for funding to get lab certification through this program? My initial reaction was to say no, because it's DEP paying DEP. But
yeah, I think we would have to talk more about it. So I wouldn't outright say no, but let's break that down and see under what circumstances it could happen.
Thank you. Also, follow-up quick question to that. I'm sure, Erin, you have all the details that are forthcoming for the grant, but are we going to be required to have matching funds for that? So maybe.
That's not, no. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm very much in the early stages of all this, but that's not on my agenda for. Yeah, I mean, the goal is to support smaller programs, so I don't want to make it a burdensome kind of project. Also, the questions are, do we give the lump sum? Do we divide it into smaller grants, among more groups? That probably will depend on the asks, frankly, and so that's just another area of conversation. We'll have to figure it out. But, if you have any suggestions, happy to hear them. For sure. Okay, any other shares, updates, announcements? We have reached 12 o'clock, so if not, I am going to call it. But thank you so much to everyone from the monitoring community who came today, who submitted those amazing questions. Thank you to DEP for presenting and for answering all of those questions. And again, we'll be able to follow up with answers there. If you have other questions that pop into your head, please feel free to send them my way. We can always, keep that line of communication open. That's our goal. That's what the Watershed Watch Network is all about. So I hope you have a great rest of your day and enjoy the start of field season. Bye-bye.
Thank you.